The prayer this morning will be offered by the good gentleman representing Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, if you could bow your heads or not, either way. This is a song from a guy named John Craigie. I'm not going to sing it because I don't want to be expelled from the House of Delegates. When the universe feels like it's against you, just take a minute to realize all it took to make you. Your parents had to meet, as random as that was, and hang out long enough, at least, to make a baby and give it your name. And all your ancestors had to do the same, exponentially backward to the start of life. So much had to happen, just exactly right. Sparks had to catch, oceans had to freeze, billions of cells had to survive endless disease. Civilizations had to crumble, wars had to be fought, bad presidents had to get elected, good presidents had to get shot. People had to leave, hearts had to get broken, people had to die just so your eyes could open. The universe is not against you. The universe is not against you. It went through a lot just to give you a chance. It must have wanted you pretty bad. No pressure, though. No pressure, though. The universe went through a lot, but no pressure, bro. You don't got to be perfect. You don't got to be a saint. Just don't waste it. This was not a mistake. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
The people in the lounge. Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 members present, the House is now in session. Clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March the 2nd, 2024.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the journal.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Folks, once again, Worcester County, our Stephen Decatur High School is here. On February 10th, 2024, the Stephen Decatur's varsity wrestling team secured its 5th state title, winning the Class 2A Wrestling State Championship. After winning a regional title the week prior, Stephen Decatur went into the final 2 rounds as the top seed in Class 2A, defeating Huntingtown 51-15 in the semifinals to secure a spot in the state finals against Damascus. Joined with us today is Stephen Decatur wrestling team coach Josh August, and 2 of the wrestlers, Elijah Kalik and Juan Hinojosa. Please help me in welcoming the state champions. Congratulations to the Decatur wrestling team, and I don't believe that the team has made it in. The rest of the team is in the gallery behind us. So folks, please help me in welcoming them.
Will the reading clerk please read the resolution in full?
Be it hereby known to all that the House of Delegates of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the Stephen Decatur High School wrestling team in recognition of your outstanding hard work all season and winning the 2023 2A State Wrestling Championship. The entire membership extends best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution to be presented on this 14th day of March 2024.
Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations, report number 9. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 97, baby food, toxic heavy metals, testing and labeling. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment 1 adds co-sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment 2 adds definitions, prohibits a person from selling, distributing, or offering for sale baby food in the state that contains toxic heavy metals that exceed limits established by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, requires a manufacturer to conduct certain testing and includes certain information on product labels, and requires consumers to make certain reports to the Maryland Department of Health. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Is this gentlelady standing to? Okay. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 850, state procurement, small business preference procurement. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 specifies that each unit, rather than the Board of Public Works, may designate certain procurements for small business preference program with the approval of the head of the unit, and authorizes that apply any contract awarded to a small business towards the 15% objective, even if the procurement is not designated for a small business preference program or the small business reserves program. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 934, radiation therapy, radiography, nuclear medicine technology, and radiology assistance, limited license radiology technologist. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical, alters the short title of the bill, and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill as introduced and instead alters the X-ray duties that an individual may perform without a license in accordance with regulations adopted by the Board of Physicians, and alters the circumstances and required training to perform those X-ray duties. It requires a physician's office to ensure that all requirements are met for each X-ray exam performed, and establishes civil penalties up to $5,000 for each violation on the physician's office and $1,000 for each violation on the individual who committed the violation. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 962, state procurement, small and minority business reserve program, Perrin J. Mitchell, MBE Prime Contracting Act. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical, alters the short title of the bill, and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill as introduced and instead increases the participation goal for Small Business Reserve Program from 15 to 20%, alters the method of determining a unit's achievement of goals, requires MDOT in consultation with GOSBA to develop an outreach program, and alter reporting requirements. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
Household 969, death certificates, cause or manner of death determinations, requirements after change or correction. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 requires that if a law enforcement agency is notified by a medical examiner in accordance with the bill, the law enforcement agency must reopen or reinvestigate an investigation involving the death of a victim and may not close a case that was reopened until at least 20 years after the notification. Please move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
Household 981, Maryland Department of Disabilities, individuals with limited English proficiency, access to public services. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical, alters the short title, and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 adds existing principal departments to the provision requiring compliance by July 1st, 2025, and adds a provision requiring new principal departments created on or after October 1st, 2024 to comply 1 year after they are created. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 7. Clerk will read the first bill.
Household 123, Division of Parole and Probation, criteria for earned compliance credit, exception for supervision fees. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
Household 321, Criminal Law, Crimes of Arson, Prohibitions and Penalties. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much we considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 changes the underlying conduct from arson to malicious or fraudulent burning, requires death or serious physical injury to a firefighter, and authorizes the imposition of a sentence that is consecutive to or concurrent with a sentence for a related crime. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
Household 485, Public Health, Prohibition on Transfer of Human Immunodeficiency Virus. Repeal. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
Household 542, Department of Human Services, Children in Foster Care, Luggage. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 is technical. Amendment number 3 clarifies that new luggage for a child in foster care does not include trash bags. Expands the circumstances under which DHS must provide new luggage to a child in foster care, requires DHS to take into account certain factors when providing the new luggage, and prohibits DHS from using disposable bags or trash bags to transport any item of a child in foster care. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
Household 832, General Provisions, Damages or Losses. Definition. Favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1060, Carroll County Sheriff Salary. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 provides that the salary of the sheriff shall be $191,078.10 beginning in 2026 and $212,309 beginning in 2027. Move the amendment, please.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1310, Baltimore City Coordinated Youth Violence Review and Response Team. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 authorizes access to and confidential use of juvenile police report records by the Baltimore City Coordinated Youth Violence Review and Response Team. Alters the duties of the review and response team, requires each organization represented on the review and response team to enter into a specified MOU, and alters provisions relating to meetings, the confidentiality of information, and obtaining the consent of parents before the review of individual cases. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 8. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 214, Family Law, Adoption of an Adult. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That was a weak aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 382, Criminal and Civil Trespass, Professional Land Surveyors, Exception. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 531, Correctional Services, Parole, Supervision Fees, and Drug and Alcohol Abuse Test Payment. Repeal. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 565, Maryland Deaths in Custody Oversight Board. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill and requires the Department of State Police to report on its in-custody suspicious homicide investigations. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 978, Courts, Maryland Court Text Message System, establishing, implementing, and maintaining. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chairman of the committee.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the provisions of the bill and substitutes a yearly reporting requirement beginning December 1st, 2024, which requires the Administrative Office of the Courts to report on the Maryland Judicial Public Text Messaging System and the future plans for the development, expansion, and implementation of the system. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1267, Public Safety, Extreme Risk Protective Orders, Review of Court Records. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1332, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Study on Location of Individuals Prior to and Following Incarceration. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary. Report number 9. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 346, Criminal Law, Controlled Dangerous Substances and Firearms. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none.
Over here. Sorry, I hate to jump in because
Well, the last time you were standing up and you were just.
Well, I
doing
was
something.
sitting in my chair, Madam Speaker. I had to use the bathroom.
TMI. Recognizing the gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hope the committee will allow me a special order on this for one day for purposes of an amendment.
Excuse me?
One session would be all right.
I think the rule book says we get a day. Let me look.
What did he say?
Okay, sure, thank you.
One day in the rule book.
Question
Thank
for
you.
the House is a special order HB 346 to the appropriate time tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? Yeah, appropriate time tomorrow. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The bill has been special ordered until the appropriate time tomorrow. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means. Report number 10. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 2, Baltimore City Property Taxes, Authority to set a special rate for vacant and abandoned property. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendment makes the bill statewide. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 108, Baltimore County Board of Education, Non-Student Member Compensation and Student Member Scholarships, Alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 delays the effective date of the act to ensure it affects all board members in the same year. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 151, Charles County Board of Education, vacancy procedures, timing and video streaming and archiving. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the time period in which Charles County Board of Education vacancies must be filled from 60 days to 90 days, provides for the opportunity to wait for a new election in election year, and requires that footage be stored in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 495, Education, Baltimore County School Board Nominating Commission, Records and Meeting Requirements. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes requirements at the interview and deliberation process for candidates considered by the Baltimore County School Board Nominating Commission, and related materials be made public, and requires the candidate interviews be recorded and made public within 48 hours. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 11. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 147, tobacco tax stamp refunds lost due to theft. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
The amendment is technical. Madam Speaker, move the amendment, please.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 765, property tax credit for hotel or residential development projects. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments clarify that a single residence is not eligible for the credit by requiring that a residential development include at least 20 units. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 945, education, initial teacher certification requirements. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the pathways by which in-state and out-of-state teachers may qualify for initial teaching certificate, including an option for the completion of a rigorous local school system induction program that contains a locally created portfolio-based assessment. I move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognizing the gentle lady from Harford County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a couple questions for the floor leader, if I may.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Good morning.
Morning.
So could you just walk us through what the current policy is and what's going to shift, what's changing?
We're opening up some new pathways. One of the main ones is that there are 3 or 4 stages, depending on how you look at it, for teachers to qualify to get a certificate. The first one is what we often call, though it's not called this in technical terms, Praxis 1. Praxis 1 has been, research shows that Praxis 1 is a good test, but it's not necessarily a great indicator of pedagogical skill. And also it tends to weed out people who are not rich and people who are of color. And so we're not getting rid of Praxis 1, but we're offering alternative pathways for that first stage. Stage 2 is a portfolio and an induction, which is really what you often think of as student teaching.
Okay.
But there's a national portfolio that's in place, but we are also asking locals to come up with their own portfolio and induction program relevant to what they think is important and with the guidance of MSDE. The other stages remain essentially the same. There is a subject area test or a grade level test depending elementary or high school. And then after that, we now have, and we have had, but it's going to be even more broadly applied, a reading skills test that teachers will learn to be good teachers of reading at any level and at any subject.
Well, that sounds really good. Are there any other states that are implementing the same structure as we are?
I haven't done the research on that.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you answering my questions. Thank you.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 12. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 740, Frederick County Property Tax Credit for Property Located in Historic District. Alterations, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 995, Washington County Board of Education members residency requirement, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1356, candidates for Village Board or Columbia Council in a Village of Columbia, reports of donations and disbursements, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1357, Howard County Payment in lieu of taxes agreements, moderate income housing, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 13. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 306, Prince George's County Economic Development Independent Innovation Agency of Prince George's County Establishment. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill and establishes a work group on independent innovation in Prince George's County to study and make recommendations regarding an entrepreneur in residence pilot program in TEDCO and strategies to establish the county as a hub for certain companies. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 507, Allegheny and Garrett Counties Property and Income Taxes Credits for Construction and Purchase of Housing. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 strikes the income tax provisions of the bill and authorizes rather than requires the county and municipal corporation property tax credits allowed under the bill for newly constructed residential real property in Allegheny and Garrett counties. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 821, Prince George's County Student Support, Specialist Networks and Success Action Plan, Student Supports and Success Act. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1409, Dorchester County Definition of Public School Employee Alteration. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to this bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 14. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 455, Comptroller Electronic Tax and Fee Return Filing Requirements. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments alter the dates by which various tax and fee returns may be filed electronically, prohibit a tax return preparer or software company from charging a separate fee for electronic filing of tax documents beginning on January 1st, 2030, and authorize certain exemptions from electronic filing requirements. I move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1064, Income Tax Subtraction Modification, Death Benefits, Law Enforcement Officers and Firefighters. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1068, Maryland Revised Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, Donors Registration by Tax Return Checkoff. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires a comptroller to implement procedures to offer certain electronic income tax return filers the opportunity to register to make an anatomical gift through a hyperlink to the donor registry. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1189, Public Schools Mathematics Credit College Preparatory Computer Science or Computer Programming Course. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 updates the bill to match the current number of mathematics credits required to graduate from high school. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1257, Public Schools Restorative Practices Schools Establishment. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes provisions related to the Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Supports and a requirement that each school in the state become a restorative practices school, requiring instead that the State Department of Education establish a comprehensive plan for establishing restorative practices schools that counties may choose to use. Move the committee amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1386, Education, Employee Training, and Holocaust Education Study Requirements. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes provisions in the bill related to institutions of higher education and a requirement that independent assessment be made by the Department of Education and broadens the scope of the training offered to educators to encompass additional forms of bias. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 34. Clerk will read.
House Bill 282, Speed Monitoring Systems, Agencies, Statements, and Certificates of Violations. Favorable report is amended, adopted.
The maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment 703522-1.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And first and foremost, I want to thank the subcommittee chair for all her hard work on this amendment and on this bill. And I understand what the bill is trying to accomplish, and certainly I understand that. One of my biggest concerns when considering the legislation, first and foremost, I'm not a big fan of speed monitoring cameras anyway. And the biggest reason why I'm concerned about them is because in so many cases, especially in certain neighborhoods with certain folks, when you get a speed camera ticket, right, it could be for $50, it could be for $200. When you get this ticket, you don't have to show, you can just pay the ticket and walk away. For a lot of folks, we got to make a decision, right? Especially people who grow up like me, low-income folks. I got to make a decision. Do I pay this $50 ticket and sacrifice a couple meals for my family, or do I take a day off of work and sacrifice, a week's worth of meals for my family? And it's easier just to pay the ticket and go away. So generally, I'm not a big fan of these for those reasons, right? And because the camera just doesn't assess the situation, it just issues the ticket and it goes on to the system. But at least with speed monitoring cameras across the state, we've put some level of guardrails, because speed citations are very different than like a traffic light citation. With a traffic light citation, right, it's very clear. The camera sees red light, vehicle moving through, boom. It's very easy to certify that. But speed's a very different thing, right? That's why law enforcement officers have to be trained and certified to use radar guns and things of that nature. That's why accident investigators have to be trained on how to understand the nuance of speed, how it impacts traffic, things of that nature. So it's not just a simple fact of, hey, here's a vehicle going at this speed based upon the machine says. There are a lot of other factors at play, right? So you have to have some level of training and certification. And in many cases, these individuals have that training certification, which is why we wanted law enforcement officers or folks that work for a law enforcement agency to be the ones required to certify these statewide. But we're creating a special carve-out for municipalities, and it puts it out of line and out of step with the intent of the General Assembly and with the rest of the state. So all this simply does is create a level of accountability. It's very small, right? So all my bill says is before performing any duties under this subsection, a technician employed by an agency shall take an oath before a person authorized to administer oaths to uphold the law without penalty or prejudice, without partiality or prejudice, and to perform the duties under this subsection in an ethical manner. It is a very low bar, right? It really accommodates all types of municipalities. Anyone who's authorized to give an oath can give this oath. And I don't think it's a very high bar. I don't think it's a very high expectation for the public trust. And it puts this piece of legislation in line with the historic will of the General Assembly, how it relates to speed cameras. So with that, Madam Speaker, I would move the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the good gentleman for bringing this amendment to me so early yesterday and continuing to work with me. Unfortunately, despite all of that, I am still going to ask this body to resist this amendment, and there are a couple of reasons for it. First and foremost, the small municipalities who asked for this bill do not want it, and so I asked you to reject it for the same people who asked for this bill. Second, the system of red light cameras across this state are signed off by agency personnel. So the same people who would be signing off on these speed camera tickets. Second, it's important to know the process. So the person who signs off on these tickets, first of all, they're trained. Second of all, they're not the ones that would go into court who are being if the ticket is being challenged. So I'm not quite sure what the oath would get us. And then finally, we had some very powerful testimony from a law enforcement officer who said, I've been through this training, and a non-sworn law enforcement officer, an agency person, could go through this and do this job just as well as I do. So for all of those reasons, I ask this body to resist the amendment.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 35. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 567, Maryland Online Data Privacy Act of 2024. Favor report as amended and adopted.
Recognizing the maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment of the desk, a couple of amendments actually. The first one that I'd like brought up for consideration is 433229/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is, as my very magnanimous friend from Charles County indicated yesterday, a very complicated, lengthy bill. It's probably not why any of us ran for office. I doubt it's on any of your, other than the general lady from Montgomery County, but it's probably not something that you can easily explain to your average voter or constituent, but it has significant impacts on anyone because we all are affected by data. We're all affected. We all use the internet. We all use a variety of services. Everyone in this room, I would suspect, has a cell phone, and they use it for a variety of purposes that create data that can be maintained or accessed by companies. This amendment to the bill basically relates to what those in the industry call content personalization. And I am somewhat of a Luddite. I am not terribly technological. It took me about 45 minutes yesterday to figure out what does content personalization mean. I never know. I don't know what you guys know when the things pop up and they say, will you accept cookies? I think somebody's giving me a chocolate chip cookie. I'm very happy to accept it. I don't really know what's going on. And so what this relates to is the current industry standards for how things like streaming services, Netflix, Spotify, the current way that they generally work is that you have to opt out of their ability to use your content choices to feed you with other potential content that you may like. So when you go on to Netflix and you say, I like watching, Rambo, the next time you go on to Netflix, they may say, hey, did you know that there's actually Rambo 7, Seventh Blood? There's a lot of movies out there about Rambo. And so you can be, according to the gentleman from Montgomery County, resident movie buff, Sylvester Stallone mercifully stopped making Rambo movies after 5. But you get my point. And so that's what content personalization is. There are services and providers that you make selections of what you want to see and what you want to do, and they utilize that data to feed those things back to you of, I signed up on Spotify, I like type of music X or artist Y, hey, here's someone that we've sort of collated that fits those things that you may want to click on, you may want to check into. And that is viewed by most consumers as a relatively benign, positive consumer choice. It helps me figure things out because I liked TV show X, I got alerted to TV show Y. Turns out I liked that too. It was fun, it was easy, I like this service, I'm gonna stick with this service. You are generally allowed today under most of these services to opt out of that content personalization mechanism. You can affirmatively go in and say, hey, I don't want you utilizing any of this. I just chose this one thing and that's it. I don't want you taking that information and highlighting me or trying to entice me to view or to use other things through your service. You can opt out. What the bill would essentially require, as written, the bill prohibits collecting that data purely for personalizing content, marketing, or targeted ads unless the consumer affirmatively consents. So it becomes an opt-in. I have to go through the process and say, yes, I want you to be able to personalize things in this service to me, whether it's content, whether it's targeted advertising. I like baseball and I get an ad about MLB season package or a ticket package for the Baltimore Orioles, something of that nature. The opt-in requirement right now conflicts with most other United States, individual states' laws and some federal privacy provisions. And I think, to be fair, it conflicts with our own consumer expectations. When we use these services, we anticipate being able to do those things, and if you don't like them, then you affirmatively opt out, and then they have to treat you as not having been done that. And so that's what the amendment would do, is it would make it, it would just switch the opting in, opting out mechanism so that the default would be you're going to get some degree of content personalization and you can choose not to do it. We're going to talk on one of the other amendments a little bit about how we probably shouldn't be legislating on all this stuff. The folks 45, 50 minutes down the road, they probably should be legislating on this because, not a big shocker, there's not a separate data service just for Maryland. When you use Netflix or Google or Spotify, there's not just an office somewhere that says you're just Marylanders. They are national and global companies, and their policies are oriented nationally and globally. And the best solution would be to have the Congress folks figure this out and apply one national standard that everyone can follow. But as we know, Congress is largely dysfunctional and can do hardly anything of any significance. So it devolves to the states. And this particular amendment would try to put us more in line with consumer expectations and with other states, not all states, but with other states on the issue. It's a wonky topic. I'm not sure even myself is that interested in it, but I'm sure that there's only a certain amount of people who really have the bandwidth, so to speak, to focus on it. But that is the spirit and intent of the amendment, and it's something that I think that most consumers, and it's important for us to keep these businesses in the Maryland market. You would not want to go home and be like, hey, my constituents really liked Spotify, and then they got a notification that said, Spotify is not going to offer this type of service or that type of service for you in Maryland anymore because we don't think that you comply with the business model we're using everywhere else. Your constituents won't like that very much if they ever find it out. So with that, I'd move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate my irascible colleague pointing this out to me. And I'm not old enough to remember Rambo, but I'm sure it was a good movie. But I'm also sure you could go ahead and let them know if that's the kind of movie you like. So what we have here is I'm trying to make sure we understand. We want to have a little more control over what these companies are doing. All you have to do is say yes. Instead of waiting and searching around and finding a way to opt out, you have to give them permission. There's nothing wrong with that. And I guess as you get older, it may be harder to operate certain devices to click that button, but it literally is just a checkbox. I consent. Give your consent. If you want Rambo and Casablanca, all these older movies, if that's what you want the target to be, then you just click consent. Because what we want to do is make sure each one of us have that consent, and they know we are secure. And this entire bill is about consent, about making sure that we're in control of our data, and that these other companies know that. I mean, I can't depend on the feds to pass a budget. I sure can't wait for them to protect my privacy. And I know my colleague is learned, and he has read this bill, and it's daily, and it's complex, but our whole goal is consent on every corner, making sure every time if they want something from us, they have to tell us what they want. We're limiting how they can use it. And also, we have to say, you know what? I want you to do that data personalization. And I guess, maybe it's complicated. Maybe finding which box to check can get confusing. But just say it says, I consent. So it's simple. We're not going to weaken this bill by giving these large companies a chance to just do as they please, when all they have to do is ask us first. All the things that my good colleague wants, all those old-fashioned movies he's looking forward to being sent and directed to, he still can get. Just check the words, I consent. We don't need to make this easy on anyone. We're going to make this where we, as a collective, understand that we're protecting ourselves, and they don't get to do anything without our consent. So I'd ask you to not vote for this amendment. Don't take away our consent. Thank you.
Maker of the amendment.
Briefly, Madam Speaker, as with everything, the devil is in the details, and I appreciate that. Consent is important, and you still have the ability to opt yourself out, but businesses and sophisticated national and international businesses, they run with a certain set of expectations, and they cannot modify and change those expectations because 255 years ago, someone decided that the Potomac River was a natural dividing line for states, and someone else went out with two cartographers named Mason and Dixon and said, you're in Maryland and you're in Pennsylvania. That's not how data works. I'm not sure what a cloud is. Every time they tell me my data is going to the cloud, I look up at the sky and wonder if it's going to rain. But I can tell you one thing, the cloud doesn't exist exclusively here in Maryland. The cloud is a global phenomenon. And so I appreciate, I think this is just an honest differentiation about how this process would work. It's not about protecting people's data. We all believe in that. I know that for myself, when I think of a young Rambo, I often picture him, imagine him bursting forward as the gentleman from Charles County. And I know with the appreciation of the things that you've said, I checked into it. On the day that I was born in 1971, color television was fully out there. On the day that you were born, black and white was still the primary means of television delivery. So, I wanted to get that out. We didn't have, back when you and I were children, we didn't have all these content options. We actually had to get up off the couch for our grandparents and go and change the channel. It was very difficult times. But I would request that the chamber consider the amendment for the good faith, which is intended. It's intended to make this more in conformity with other states and enable us to have these services as they are today. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the amendment.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Is everyone out of the ring? They did. Clerk will take the call. There being 101, the amendment fails. Excuse me?
I have an additional amendment, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
It should be 113026/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If you didn't think that the last conversation was boring and wonky enough, you're going to love this one because it's worse. This one relates to a concept called data minimization. Data minimization. And what data minimization is as a concept in this industry is tightening the scope and the purposes for which these services, these data controllers, these companies that can access your data through your computer usage essentially, or your digital usage, can retain that data and utilize it. And there's a little bit of a debate and a dichotomy across the United States between how tight that those regulations should go. Ours is pretty tight, I think, by everyone's consideration. So I'm going to read something to you. Data minimization is a concept that says we only process, these entities that collect the information or have access to the information, only process the personal information that they can glean from your digital activity that is necessary, relevant, and adequate for their purposes. And that's essentially some of the language that's in here. There's something called purpose limitation, only process personal information for the specified purpose for which you collected it, or for other purposes that are compatible with that original purpose. And that's essentially what this does. What the amendment would do is say, hey, you have the right to affirmatively notify the digital service, I want my data usage to be particularly minimized, and then you also can take a look at it and say, hey, I'm okay with expanding. It's somewhat similar to the last argument. Other states require businesses to disclose how they intend to use personal data so that consumers can make informed choices about whether to do business with them. I don't like doing business with digital company X because they're going to more broadly disclose data. I don't want to use their service. This bill would take that choice away from the consumer by prohibiting these digital services and businesses from collecting personal data for any purpose other than to provide a product or service, whether or not they've disclosed it. So the committee chair indicated we want to have your consent. Under this, the bill is currently construed and the amendments designed to rectify that. You don't have the ability to give consent to broader data sharing. You may choose to do that for a variety of reasons. I try very hard to avoid engaging in a lot of these digital data transactions, so I'm not positive exactly what they would be in your mind. But there are lots of constituents and consumers who choose to say, I'm fine with you using my data because it may enable me to access better services. It may enable me to get discounts. It may enable me to do a wide variety of things that I find beneficial. And the amendment would simply restore that and bring it in line with some other states. The committee has worked very hard. I want you to imagine it's like data minimization could be very small and tight. It could be, a sort of a middle ground, or it could be just wide throttle open. You can use the data for anything. I don't want the wide throttle open. That's not what the amendment is intended to do. I think we'd be best for right now to chart more of a middle course on data minimization. That's certainly what the industry players who service your constituents believe. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would again ask my colleagues to oppose this amendment. Give an example of like Facebook. And Facebook, when you log on and they kind of tell you what they're going to do, it's a long list of disclosures, they'll call them. And if you have problems, depending on your age of clicking I consent, you're probably not going to read all those disclosures. And I think South Park had a wonderful episode about what happens when you don't read and you click accept. So what we don't want to do is we want to have people avoid that situation where they have unduly and unknowingly accepted things that they knew nothing about. So when we're on Facebook, I don't know if people understand that Facebook has something called tracking pixels. They connect those to other websites. They collect all kind of data points about the individual, and then they're basically passed around and sold. The confusion is, why are you collecting these points when I just want to be on Facebook? The devil is indeed in the details. Why do they need to know about your credit score? Why do they need to be able to collect information on the things that you've texted if all they're doing is showing you a Netflix movie? Again, it makes no sense. The reason we put this in is because people oftentimes get tricked into checking that box because they're in a hurry. It's an app. And you also don't know who owns, because I want to make sure we understand, like TikTok is a great example. Geolocation, tracking your data points. I don't think they need to be collecting any of that, even if I or my child or a young individual or a college student says, yes, I want to be on TikTok like everybody else, and they hit the word accept. They shouldn't be able to track an individual, my child, anybody in my family, myself included. And right now we have foreign entities that also own and run these companies, gathering information on Americans. If you want to watch a movie, if I want you to collect only the data that you need to figure out which kind of movies I like. If it's about listening to music, you shouldn't be trying to collect any other data, because at the end of the day, how can that be anything but nefarious? And I don't want foreign entities or large corporations having access to that kind of data for no reason. I believe that this is I won't say scatological, but I believe that this is definitely a misunderstood amendment, because we're trying to protect our people. There's no reason you should be asking for more than what you need to do the business that you're doing. So for all those reasons, guys, we've got to make sure we do something to take better control of our data. And allowing them to get more data, making it more vague and broadening the concept of what they can collect is the opposite of what we're trying to do. So for all these reasons, I would ask that you oppose this amendment.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Briefly, and I appreciate that. This data minimization also oftentimes doesn't relate just to how we collect the information. The information can be the magic of computers that I will never understand till the day I die. Somehow you can click on something and just the operation of the machines themselves. And it's going to get worse. We all know that with AI. We all know that things are growing more and more in that direction. They're still going to collect a lot of this information. They're still going to be able to find out through publicly accessible ways what your credit score is. They're going to be able to find out different things. Data minimization relates to what purposes they can use that for, what purposes that they can optimize the information. And so, again, this is giving consumers the consent to do so. I would not want to do anything that would perniciously or deleteriously allow people to get access to information about children. That's just wrong. And I also appreciate the fact I don't really know what a TikTok is. I think it's a clock. I mean, apparently it is now in Washington, D.C., completely disliked by a wide range of people, from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Everybody hates TikTok, so I'm on board. Like that's a good thing. I still haven't figured out what it is exactly, but it exists. So I hope that we consider the amendment. I'm sure that the die has been cast. I was going to do that in Latin for my friend from Charles County, but I don't want to get too far along. But I hope that everyone will consider the amendment and understand why it's there and why these things are important. Move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Everybody's having fun.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone care to change your vote? If not, clerk will take the call. There being 103, the amendment fails. Yes. You have another one?
I have one final amendment, and this one is very simple, Madam Speaker. 603129/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We just talked about how every state, and many states, not all 50 states, have adopted policies on this. So some of these companies operate in the void of, hey, there's no state regulation in particular on these policies in Wyoming or in Oklahoma or in South Carolina or in Vermont. There's no policy. There's no law that's been passed by their state legislatures. So they operate in the void of, we do the industry practices, which I've tried to describe to you in hopefully as mildly amusing a way as possible, because it's very boring. but they operate in that void, and then there's a handful of states, I think it might be up to 6, 8, 9, there's some considering them today, Connecticut, Colorado, California, there's a variety of Virginia that have adopted what we're doing. We don't have a specific data privacy bill that would apply to all these processes until we pass this. Our law is somewhat in the void on some of these issues. This amendment is preemption. And so beyond the fact that the companies have to deal with a patchwork of my system is perfectly okay for how I do the things we've just talked about in Pennsylvania or in Iowa, but when I have a Maryland or a Virginia consumer that logs on, I have to change and customize that for their law. We're going to have to live with that because the feds can't seem to regulate in this space conclusively. What we shouldn't have to live with is localities within the state of Maryland adopting their own regulations or their own processes or procedures that are at variance with what the state's going to do. We call that in law express preemption. All the amendment does is it just adds very, very simple language that I provided to the committee chair, just a sentence essentially that would go at the end or in a convenient spot of the bill as determined by the bill drafters that says your locality can't decide that we're going to pass a local regulation ordinance statute to change the way that we're going to deal with data privacy. This bill runs and controls data privacy when and if passed and enacted from Oakland to Ocean City and every point in between, and you can't do something different. That's important for consumer expectation. It's important for the companies. I know sometimes we don't like hearing about the companies, but they're real. And they're the big players in this space. They're not sitting up all night worried about what Allegheny County, Maryland does or what Baltimore City does. They're like, hey, we're a multi-billion-dollar international company. We cannot deal with a patchwork quilt of regulations on these services. So this would simply put in an express preemption provision that says we are the final authority as the Maryland legislature on what happens on these data privacy issues. Your localities cannot exceed or be at variance with these regulations or restrictions. It's intended for those purposes, and subject to further debate, I'd move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, and as my colleague said, these are very large, multi-billion-dollar companies, and I appreciate his defense of them because I'm sure they need it. But what I'll say is, I'm surprised because I thought of all people, local control would be something that he would find interesting and want to defend these duly elected officials and the choices that they would make. But I'll take it a step further is because the gates that control this information are not controlled by the municipalities or the counties, they're controlled by the state and the feds. So they have very little play in this. More so, at the end of the day, it becomes something that's it's implicit. We pass laws here every day, and not everyone, and most of our laws don't say that this preempts county laws or no other county can make a law. We very seldomly do that, in fact, of all the laws we pass. Again, I understand, these big businesses, they will make their adjustments. This is unnecessary, it's implied. And again, the counties, they don't have any power or authority to actually make a difference in any of these forms or fashions because they don't control the gates. We do. So for all those reasons, I would ask that you please oppose this amendment.
Yes.
Briefly, Madam Speaker, I appreciate that. We just created the legislative record, which will inure to the effect that if there are lawsuits challenging this in the future for local regulation, the committee chair has just stated that this is what we call implied preemption, so that the courts would interpret it and say, even though the state didn't say it, you can't pass a different rule where you are. Obviously, even though no one has done it yet, because hey, we're the big bad state and we're just getting around to doing it. It's a new horizons out there. The fact that no one has done it yet does not mean that nationwide there are not local jurisdictions that have already begun to try to flex their muscles to regulate in the field. And, as I would always say, if we all agree that, hey, we want that to be the intent, as my friend from Charles County just said, then just put it in the bill. It doesn't cost us any more money for the bill drafter to add a sentence to the bill and add it on. If you've ever seen the annotated code of Maryland, it is voluminous. It's not going to change anything to add one sentence to the code. And so if we're all in agreement that that's what we want, it would be simpler and I think more meaningful to simply put that in there. I do like local control. But we do exclusively preempt the field in an awful lot of things, like cannabis. We exclusively preempt a lot of local zoning control over cannabis. We exclusively preempt a lot of local zoning control over the siting of certain energy facilities, like windmills and solar farms. We tell locals, I don't really care too much about what you can't do anything in this space, I can. And that's basically the same argument that we're making here. So, subject to further debate, move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. This is it, right? Okay. Thank you. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 36. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 979, Agriculture Invasive Plant Species Regulation, Biodiversity, and Agricultural Protection Act. Favorable report is amended and adopted.
Recognizing the maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have only one amendment at the desk, but I will not actually be offering it. But I would like to make a couple comments on what this amendment would actually do. And I say that because it's critically important, because this is an issue that's critically important for our ag industry. You know, when we're talking about invasive weeds, we're talking about invasive plants. They are a major threat to our grain production in Maryland on the Eastern Shore. So we have to have strong laws and strong protections against that. But we also have to be careful that we're not so dependent on our grain industry, that we also have, you know, we foster our greenhouses, our nurseries, you know, our ag tourism and all those sorts of things. So what this amendment would have done is would have offered some protections to our growers in Maryland. But after a lot of research with Department of Ag, Committee Council, grain producers, and our floor leader, we learned over the last 12 hours that those protections are already in place in state law. So what this bill does, along with current law, is it does thread that needle where it protects both you know, all of the subcategories in our ag industry, along with strong laws in regards to invasive plants and weeds. So I will not be offering the amendment because it's not necessary. And I also want to thank the committee for their work over the last 12 hours. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Any further debate or any additional amendment? And the bill has been now going to ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 7. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 175, Occupational Licensing and Certification, Criminal History, Prohibited Disclosures, and Predetermination Review Process. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 removes provisions in the bill that prohibited specific executive departments from denying an occupational license or certificate to an applicant solely on the basis of the criminal history of the applicant. Move the amendment.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 180, State Board of Cosmetologists Licensing Eyelash Extensions. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds providing eyelash extension services to the definition of providing aesthetic services. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 272, Cannabis Licensing and Registration, Use of Straw Ownership, Prohibition. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
So much be considered reading of the amendments.
You throw me off there. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Looking at something else. All right. Go ahead. I'll try to. Go ahead. Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds new definitions, alters the enforcement authority, and changes the effective date. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 426, Places of Public Accommodation, Motion Picture Houses, Captioning. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds new definitions, clarifies that the bill applies to movies, clarifies the application of the bill, and specifies the size of the movie house the bill applies to. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 465, Workplace Fraud and Prevailing Wage Violations, Penalties and Referrals. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 removes the criminal penalties and increases the civil penalty to $10,000. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. And amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 649, Labor and Employment, Equal Pay for Equal Work, Wage Range Transparency. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters a definition of wage range to mean the minimum and maximum hourly rate or minimum and maximum salary for position. Repeals the requirement for promotion, transfer, or other employment opportunities and applies disclosure requirements only to the employment position in the state. Requires the Commission of Labor to develop a form that an employer may use to comply with the wage disclosure requirements and make the form available to all employers. Requires the employer to keep the records for at least 3 years after the position has been filled. Repeals the private right of action. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 710, Business Regulation, Household Goods Movers, Special Fund and Fees, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 808, Alcoholic Beverages, Retail Delivery, Local Delivery Service Permit, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
As amended, House Bill 808 establishes a local delivery service permit that authorizes the holder to deliver alcoholic beverages from a retail license holder authorized to deliver alcoholic beverages to an individual in the jurisdiction where the retail license holder is located as specified. Bill only applies in a local jurisdiction whose local licensing board has adopted regulations authorizing local delivery by a third-party contractor. The bill also modifies general provisions related to the retail delivery of alcoholic beverages as specified. Amendment number 1 authorizes the executive director of the Alcohol, Tobacco, Cannabis Commission to adopt regulations to enforce the bill. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 882, Business Regulation, Sale of Motor Fuel, Pricing Signage, Gas Price Gouging Act, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires all retail service stations to prominently display the cash price and, if higher, the credit and debit price of gas in numerals of the same size, and provides that the bill supersedes inconsistent local laws. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1049, Consumer Protection, Automatic Renewals, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 limits the application of the bill, authorizes another method for compliance, and removes the private right of action. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1083, Alcoholic Beverages, Class 4 Limited Winery License, Requirements and Authorizations, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be reconsidered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 defines Maryland-grown agricultural product, alters the bulk purchase percentage for certain products marketed as Maryland-grown, and makes clarifying changes. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1228, Consumer Protection, Telephone Solicitation, Exemptions and Waiver of Remedies, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the enforcement and penalty provisions of the bill. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1275, Vehicle Laws, Manufacturers and Dealers, Standing of Dealer Associations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the definition of dealer and limits the authority of the dealer association to only requesting certain hearings with the MVA. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1397, Human Relations, Discrimination, Protected Characteristics. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Introduction of House Bill during the last 35 days of session. Recognizing the gentle lady from Howard County and Chair or Ways.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is 100% my senator's fault.
Works for me. Okay. Shall the bill be introduced? Requires 94 votes. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative, the bill will be introduced. Clerk will read the bill and the committee assignment.
House Bill 1524, Chair Ways and Means Committee. House rules.
That ends the work at the desk. Could our leaders, our committee chairs come up, please? Okay. All right. Committee announcements, appropriations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Appropriations Committee will meet immediately following session to vote. Thank you.
Judiciary.
House Judiciary Committee will have voting session at 1 o'clock.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Environment and Transportation Committee will have voting at 1:15, but keep an ear out for some subcommittees before that.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will have a voting session at 1 p.m.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Economic Matters Committee will not be meeting, so enjoy your lunch.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Please, for the committee, listen to subcommittee announcements. We will be having bill hearings, but it will be after second session later this evening. Thank you.
Subcommittee announcements. Oh, which one is she? All right.
Madam Speaker.
Transportation.
The Transportation and Environment Subcommittee of Appropriations will meet at 2 p.m. today, 2 p.m., 1:45, in room 145.
And one. Workers' Comp.
Workers' Comp, thank you, Madam Speaker. Workers' Comp Subcommittee will be meeting immediately after floor session in the committee room.
Okay. Motor Vehicles.
Thank you,
and
Madam Speaker.
Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Motor Vehicles and Transportation will meet at 12:15 on Zoom.
Okay. Health, Occupation, Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That subcommittee will meet by Zoom immediately after session.
Natural Resources.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Natural Resources will meet after voting.
Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Public Safety and Admin will meet at 1 p.m. today. I'll email you guys the location.
Capital.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Capital Budget Subcommittee will meet at 3 p.m. regarding the PAYGO capital.
Education, Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Education and Economic Development Subcommittee of Appropriations will be meeting at 1 p.m. for a voting session on the budget.
Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Education Subcommittee of Ways and Means will meet at 12:30 on Zoom.
Okay. What else we got? Insurance and Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Insurance and Pharmaceuticals Subcommittee of Health and Government Operations will meet at 2 o'clock on Zoom this afternoon.
That Health, Occupation, and Long-Term Care.
I've been corrected. We are meeting at 1 o'clock, still by Zoom.
Oh, okay. Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Social Services Subcommittee on Appropriations is meeting at 2 in the Prince George's County Delegation Room. Thank you.
Okay. Public Health and Minority Disparities.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Public Health and Minority Health Disparities Subcommittee will be meeting at 2 p.m. on Zoom.
Any other subcommittees? Good. Any delegation announcements? Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Baltimore City House delegation will be meeting tomorrow via Zoom. We're going to update it. It's going to be 9 a.m.
Okay. Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Baltimore County delegation will meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning on Zoom.
Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Anne Arundel County delegation will not be meeting tomorrow. We will resume delegation meetings March 22nd.
Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Montgomery County House delegation will meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. on Zoom.
Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Southern Maryland delegation will meet via Zoom tomorrow at 9.
Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Prince George's County House delegation will meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning via Zoom.
Okay. Charles.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Charles County delegation will meet at 10 a.m. via Zoom on tomorrow morning.
Any others? No? Okay. Any caucus announcements? No caucus announcements. Okay. All right. We have Women's History Moment. Gentlelady representing Montgomery County. This was on here.
Howard County, Madam Speaker.
Well, they had something else on the sheet.
There's been changes, yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, colleagues, and yes, it is still morning. Welcome to your Thursday Women's History Moment. Some of you know that in my previous career, I worked at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I started there in 1989, and less than a year later, the Hubble Space Telescope, designed and built at Goddard, was launched. What you may not know is that the person who established the astronomy program at NASA, the person who built that program and who pushed for space-based telescopes to be built, was a woman named Nancy Grace Roman. While Dr. Roman was not born in Maryland, she spent her high school years in Baltimore, where she attended Western High School. She knew she wanted to be an astronomer from an early age, and surprise, surprise, there were many who tried to dissuade her from this, but she persevered. She went to Swarthmore College and then the University of Chicago, where she earned her PhD in just 3 years. In 1955, after working in academia for several years and realizing that because she was a woman, she had no hope of getting a tenured position, she moved back to Maryland and took a job at the Naval Research Laboratory. Again, she persevered. While there, Dr. Roman was asked if she knew anyone who might be interested in creating a program for space-based astronomy at NASA. Dr. Roman took this inquiry as an invitation to apply, and in early 1959, 6 months after NASA was formed, she joined the team, becoming the first chief of astronomy and NASA's first female executive. Over the next 20 years, she not only was a founding member of the U.S. civilian space program, she was a leading pioneer of modern space-based astronomy and brought the reluctant astronomy community, they liked their ground-based telescopes, with her by consistently reaching out to share not only what NASA was doing, but also asking what their wants and needs were, an approach now considered foundational in the space science community and one achieved because she persevered. In the early 1970s, Dr. Roman became the primary advocate and overseer of a program known as the Large Space Telescope, or LST. She brought not only her technical knowledge, but also her people skills to the process of bringing LST into being. After convincing both the astronomy community and the NASA hierarchy of the feasibility and value of LST, Roman then spoke to key politically connected people in a series of dinners hosted by the NASA administrator in order to build support, and then wrote testimony for Congress throughout the 1970s to continue to justify LST, which eventually became the Hubble Space Telescope. It's this long advocacy that led her to being known as the mother of Hubble Space Telescope. Once again, she had persevered. Dr. Roman retired from NASA in 1979, well before Hubble was launched in 1990, but her imprint on the agency and astronomy is indelible. NASA continues to study the far reaches of space, and its next great observatory, on schedule to launch in 2027, is the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope. The Roman Telescope project, also managed out of Goddard, will, among other things, measure the effects of dark energy, a topic Dr. Roman was particularly fascinated by. Thanks to pioneers like Dr. Roman, I was able to work with and for an amazing number of female leaders while at NASA. Space scientists, earth scientists, engineers, computer scientists, as well as business and management leaders who, like me, were neither scientists nor engineers. Nancy Grace Roman was a blazer for women at NASA. I hope the telescope bearing her name will continue to inspire all of us, especially future astronomers, boys and girls, for years to come. Thanks for listening to this Women's History Moment.
Any personal or guest announcements? Gentlelady from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to ask the body to give a very warm welcome to a special guest of the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland. We are joined today, this morning, by the president of our Maryland Black Caucus Foundation, Dr. Zena Pierre.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, please welcome today in the front gallery representatives of the Baltimore County Student Council.
Young lady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Body, earlier today, the gallery was filled up with a lot of homeschool students, primarily from Charles County, from St. Mary's County, and from Prince George's County. They're going to be making their way through the office building today and handing out cookies and introducing themselves. So if you see them, a lot of them are wearing red. Just say hello to them. Those are your homeschool families from your communities.
Any others? Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I'd like to recognize in the back gallery some members of the Crofton Chamber of Commerce that came to visit us today. Thank you.
Can they stand? I don't think they're there right now. They didn't stand. Any other guest announcements? Yes, gentleman from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of all the math majors in the room and all the math teachers in the room, it is March 14th, and I just want to wish everybody a happy Pi Day.
Any other personal or guest announcements? Okay. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 135 members present, and the House is still in session. Chair recognizing the majority leader, but everyone needs to listen.
Thank you, Madam
Go
Speaker.
ahead.
I move that the House stands adjourned until Thursday, March 14th at 3 p.m. Legislative date, March 4th.